I have the distinct honor to introduce to you our keynote speaker, the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, General C.Q. Brown, Jr. As Chief of Staff, General Brown serves as a senior Air Force officer responsible for the organization, training, and equipping of 689,000 active duty, Guard, Reserve, and civilian forces serving all around the world. As a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he and the other service chiefs function as military advisors to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, and of course, the President of the United States. General Brown was commissioned in 1984 as a distinguished graduate of the ROTC program at Texas Tech. He served in a variety of positions throughout his career. More recently, he's commanded a fighter squadron, the U.S. Air Force Weapons School, 2 fighter wings, and U.S. Forces Central Command, Air Force's Central Command. Just prior to serving in his current role, General Brown was the commander of the Pacific Air Forces, the air component of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. General Brown is a command pilot with more than 2,900 flying hours, 130 of them in combat. And now, to welcome General C.Q. Brown, Jr., please direct your attention to the screens.
Our Air Force has innovated before, and we can do it again. I show this video that you just watched just last month as we celebrate the Air Force's 75th anniversary. And at this important milestone, we recognize that the nature of conflict is changing. We're at an inflection point for our national security. It will take the full strength of our partnerships across industry and academic institutions to meet the challenges ahead. Our Air Force was built on bold initiative. And this audience knows that innovation is more than just a buzzword. Innovation is the evolutionary and revolutionary changes to existing processes, capabilities, and mindsets. Walter Isaacson's book, The Innovators, captures this sentiment when he writes, "Progress comes not only in great leaps, but also from hundreds of small steps." Innovation depends on creative individuals and supportive organizations to turn concepts into reality. Innovation is who we are. Thanks to the outstanding hosts here at the Ohio State University. This is a proud academic institution, and for good reason. Ohio State consistently ranks in the top 5 for industry-sponsored research across U.S. universities. I also want to thank Dr. Stephanie Tompkins for the introduction in her role as the DARPA's director, which is commendable. I'm honored to be here at DARPA Forward and grateful for your support of innovative developments that advance air power. To those gathered here over the next couple of days, your attendance at this conference, in person and virtual, codifies a commitment to challenge convention. Together, we deliver the strategic advantages necessary to ensure our national security. I'm grateful to learn about the DARPA risers attending this conference. Our nation benefits when we listen to new voices like these, voices that are committed to national security research and can directly connect to DARPA. Today, I would like to frame strategic challenges and opportunities highlighting areas where DARPA can make a difference in the future of air power. When I became the chief 2 years ago, I shared my strategic approach accelerate change or lose. Because as I look across the security horizon, three things crystallize for me. Uncontested Air Force dominance is not assured. Good enough today will fail tomorrow. And we must collaborate within and throughout to succeed. As the international security landscape changes, we must also change and prepare if we want to preserve our way of life. For the last 30 years, we've enjoyed a period of steady state dominance in which we've grown accustomed to being an Air Force with unmatched technical prowess. We find ourselves in a pivotal period, one that is fundamentally reshaping the international security landscape. While our nation was focused on countering violent extremists, our competitors focus on matching our way of war. Our tactical skills are sharp, but we need to reframe our thinking to meet the challenges we will face in the future. In many ways, today's security environment parallels our past. From competition among nations, the race for technology, territorial disputes, to vying for resources. These are not new challenges, but the complexity and combination are more than ever before. And the growing capabilities of our strategic competitors challenge our advantages. But our Air Force and national security partners thrive under challenging conditions. We know strategic competition, and we know what it means to accelerate change, because we've done this before, and we can do it again. The transformation requires tough choices, and our national security strategic documents make it clear. We must advance our nation's priorities through the National Defense Strategy framework of integrated deterrence, campaigning, and most appropriate for this audience, building enduring advantages. The National Defense Strategy states, and I quote, "The Department will earnestly build enduring advantages across the defense ecosystem. The Department of Defense, the defense industrial base, and the array of private sector and academic enterprises that innovate and support the systems on which our military depends," unquote. Our national security depends on just how well we can innovate together. And while we cannot predict the future, we can shape the future. I wrote Accelerate Change or Lose because our Air Force strategic narrative needed to change. The environment we operate in is becoming more complicated and complex. Our nation depends on our urgent response. Accelerate Change or Lose is my strategic framework on why we should change. The 4 action orders that accompany the Accelerate Change or Lose: airmen, bureaucracy, competition, and design implementation are the focus areas of change, areas where we must challenge the status quo. Our Air Force must accelerate change to control and exploit the air domain to the standard the nation expects and requires from the United States Air Force. DARPA Forward challenges us to join in with the innovators, technical experts, creative geniuses, and national security change makers. These venues challenge us to change the world and to do so with a sense of urgency. DARPA acts as a bridge across our defense ecosystem, linking military, industry, academia in a way that allows for short-term risks in favor of long-term gains. DARPA has innovated before. DARPA oversaw the HAB Blue effort that led to the F-117A stealth fighter and the stealth aircraft that followed. DARPA's rapid prototyping philosophy developed the first medium-sized uncrewed aerial vehicle, AMBER, leading to the Predator, and its improved variations have been important for worldwide employment ever since. And DARPA's work in electronics dramatically reduced the size of GPS receivers, enabling aircraft navigation and advanced weapons employment. DARPA has innovated before, and we'll need DARPA to do it again. To succeed, we must properly identify problems, empower decentralized solutions by individuals and by teams, and we must infuse an ethos of innovation at all levels. The Air Force's partnership with DARPA is strong, and it is this type of work that will allow us to advance the priorities set forth in our national defense strategy. Indeed, DARPA is already impacting how the Department of the Air Force rises to the occasion through our operational imperatives. The operational imperatives that address space order of battle and architecture, advanced battle management system, next generation air dominance family of systems, moving target engagement, resilient basing, sustainment and communications, B-21 family of systems, and readiness to transition to a wartime posture. This conference affords an opportunity to focus on our shared national objectives to build enduring advantages. To do this, the Air Force must have the right mix of air power capabilities and capacity to defend the homeland, project air power globally, operate as a joint, allied, and partner force on a bedrock of foundational investments, enabling the Air Force to adapt in dynamic environments. You must undertake reforms to repurpose force development, design, and life cycle management systems to enable more competitive, strategy-driven decisions. We must make the right investments to drive research and discovery. And we must place meaningful capability into the hands of airmen to build the Air Force we need for the future. It is essential we fortify our defense ecosystem to make it more resilient and vigilant against competitors, while strengthening the adaptability and flexibility of our enterprise to meet emerging challenges. Lastly, you must cultivate a diverse and skilled workforce, because a strong and adaptive and talented force is required to confront the dynamic challenges of today and tomorrow. Achieving this is easier said than done, but it is what our nation and strategic documents task us to do, so we must transform. The greatest security risk we face is the military modernization and strategic breakout of our pacing challenge, China, and the acute threat of Russia. DARPA plays a vital role in addressing these complex challenges, and our airmen and our joint force know that air power is in high demand. But we must balance risk over time. Our need for transformation requires trade-offs between maintaining capabilities for current threats and accelerating modernization efforts for success in future high-end conflicts, and staying ready throughout. The Air Force was established in 1947, based on the compelling case for air power and the opportunities it unlocks. But the Air Force's legacy started long before the establishment of our service. In fact, it began with the Wright brothers, two bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio, who unlocked the secrets of aerodynamics and achieved something thought impossible. DARPA's connection to the Air Force is storied. The advancements in uncrewed aerial vehicles, stealth aircraft, and GPS have forever changed the foundations of our service. I reflect on the fact that our service and DARPA were created on a foundation of innovation and forward thinking, and how we must harness that mindset and accelerate change to transform from the force we have today to one needed to meet our pacing challenge. We've done this before, and I'm confident we can do it again. But we must do it together. One of the key words I purposely included in Accelerate, Change, or Lose was collaboration. Because I know success takes help. Failure can be done alone. And protect and enhance our future collective international security, we need to increase our emphasis on collaboration and integrate like never before, because the emerging threats of today require our collective effort. Not only do we need to collaborate and integrate, but we must accelerate. Our window of opportunity is closing. Our future requires us to get beyond talking about what we want to do. We have to go do. And this go-do culture is reflected in our Air Force's current efforts to meet the needs of our national security and defense strategies, our joint warfighting concept, and recognizes the changing trends and tendencies in the character of warfare. We are accelerating the adoption of operational concepts to integrate our core missions at key points in time. Adoption is more than just drafting the concept and putting it on the shelf in the event of crisis, contingency, or conflict. Adoption is making the concepts part of our DNA, part of our culture. Bottom line, our Air Force and your teams alike must build our culture, not just our concepts. The Air Force is committed to areas that will drive culture change. I'd like to address a couple today: mission command and agile combat employment. We rewrote Air Force Doctrine Publication 1 with a focus on mission command, which requires mutual trust, shared understanding, and clear commander's intent. Leaders give our airmen intent, empower them, and then get the hell out of the way. We might think that this is intuitive. I assure you, it is not. To make our doctrine easier to grasp and to read, we took it from 141 pages down to just 16. And let that be a challenge to those of you who have impact on your organization's doctrine and guidance. Get direct, cut to the point, and embolden your message, making it something that those you're privileged to lead will actually read. Bottom line, our Air Force cannot wait to implement mission command in a conflict. It needs to be something we do every day. This is an area where I can see the power of DARPA. As we close the gap in technology, you need to lead in what will undoubtedly be a contested and degraded environment. Second, our Air Force is serious about agile combat employment, known as ACE, because the way we deployed our forces to establish static bases over the past several decades would not work against an increasing threat. ACE is a means of maneuver to increase survivability while generating and projecting air power. Versus dispersing our capability on airfields, ACE disperses our capability across airfields. ACE requires us to be lighter, leaner, and more agile. This is a particular area we absolutely invite DARPA's focus. ACE requires our strongest mix of technical prowess and creative genius. As I've visited bases across our Air Force, I've seen the progress we've made. We must continue to develop and refine capabilities that are important to ACE. Command and control, logistics under attack, air and missile defense, to name a few. These are a few concepts that our Air Force makes accelerate to drive culture. Air power is dependent on the potential of our airmen, industry, and academia to innovate. A potential which is not limited to technology, but includes using current technology and capabilities in new ways. We cannot simply view new, big, or expensive technology leaps as the only way to innovate. We must harness any innovation that can build meaningful capability into the hands of warfighters. A good example is Stitches, the system of systems, technology, integration, tool, chain for heterogeneous electronic systems. Stitches, that's why we like using acronyms, that is way too long. Stitches rapidly integrates systems and subsystems not originally designed to cross-communicate. Stitches does not force a common interface standard. Rather, it rapidly creates the needed connections based on existing fielded capabilities, limiting the need to upgrade to interoperate. Our airmen, active duty, Guard, Reserve, civilian, and our vast and incredible partners in industry and academia. You are the heart of our innovation, and I'm constantly reminded that each of you drive the potential of our technology and the potential of our ideas. Both are unlimited. But our resources and timelines to credible combat power and capability are not. We'll need to have a strategic conversations and make difficult choices to drive change, to solve our toughest problems, and to make sure our 7 operational imperatives become a reality. These are the changes we need and the key areas we must modernize to have a credible combat force. And when we put all these pieces together, across domains and services, the interagency, industry, academia, and with our allies and partners, we can assure and deter. We can have integrated deterrence, and we can have air power anytime, anywhere, should deterrence fail. In closing, as leaders of our many organizations, we must continue to solve problems of today and tomorrow, no matter how complicated or complex. We must transition and balance risks so we can stand ready to deter today and be prepared for conflict if deterrence fails tomorrow. We need thinkers at all levels to get on board for the giant leaps, as well as the small steps needed to accelerate change for our Air Force. As the Air Force begins its 76th year, together we will continue to provide America the air power it needs to defend the nation, deter or defeat our adversaries, and reassure our allies and partners. As the world is growing more complicated and complex, our Air Force is the most respected Air Force in the world. This is because our entire defense industry, active, Guard, Reserve, civilians, in lockstep with our industry and academia partners, and bridged by the momentum made possible by DARPA, are all critical to the success for the United States Air Force to have air power anytime, anywhere. We've innovated before, and I'm confident we can do it again. Thanks for the opportunity to join you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General Brown, for those insightful remarks. I am Colonel Ben Bishop, and I am the Department of the Air Force liaison here at DARPA. And sir, we do have lots of questions coming in, so we'll just dive right in. So the first question, General, could you talk more about the approach you've identified as integrated by design? And what does it mean for both airmen and those who support the Air Force research and development activities?
Well, integrated by design is kind of aligned with our one part of our framework for our national defense strategy of integrated deterrence. And one of the things I've been, I guess I would say, fortunate to have done throughout my career as a general officer, I've spent 0 time in the Pentagon until I became the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And so, and because of that, I spent a lot of time overseas or working with our allies and partners overseas. And too often I was frustrated in the aspect when we talk about interoperability, we weren't integrated by design. And what I mean by that, we need to start at the beginning with the end in mind. And how do we look at bringing in all of our partners early into the process, not only our allies and partners, but I would say with industry and academia, and how we work more closely together and break down 3 key areas that I outlined in integrated by design, which is people. Having those relationships is really important. Looking at our policies, because I think our policies sometimes tie our hands, and then our processes to actually move things much faster to put them in the hands of our warfighters. And so for our airmen and for audiences like this, it's really how do we break down barriers and figure out and how we challenge the status quo, because to me that is probably the most important thing we can do to accelerate the change we need to ensure we maintain the advantages that we have as a joint force. But as you might imagine, I'm very biased about the United States Air Force. We still got to be the most respected Air Force in the world, and we cannot do that resting on our laurels. But we can't do it alone either, and that's why working with our allies and partners is so important.
Yes, sir. So the next question, how does the current conflict in Ukraine shape your thinking about the future of air power?
Well, it's the value of air superiority. And you think about really for the United States Air Force, and we've operated for really the past 30 years in the Middle East, there wasn't much of an Air Force we had to deal with, particularly for the last 20 years. And what you see right now in Ukraine is neither Air Force actually has air superiority. And so what it's really boiled down into is an artillery duel, and I would equate it to something very similar to trench warfare during World War I. If either side had air superiority, it could change the dynamics of this particular campaign. And that's, to me, is one of the areas that I talk to, and I've talked to many of my NATO partners, my counterparts, on this very topic of how important air power is. Because there'll be a lot of focus on artillery and anti-tank weapons. We're not talking about air power in this, but air power would really change the dynamics of this particular piece. Now, what I would also say about what Ukraine's been able to do is they've got their integrated air defenses, which, oh, by the way, are Russian. So you think the Russians would kind of understand their own systems. They've been very good about using those systems, being very dynamic and not being a static target, by being able to move. And as I talked about agile combat employment, there's aspects of that of being able to shoot and scoot and complicate things for the Russians. And so they have less confidence to actually come cruising air power-wise through Ukraine.
All right, sir, switching gears a little bit. You mentioned mission command in the future. How do you think AI and human-machine partnerships change how we look at mission command?
I see AI and kind of human-machine partnerships as will help advance mission command. One part about mission command is trust. And I often talk about trust, intent, trust, and empowerment. In order to use AI appropriately, you got to have the right intent. And so it's how do you, as a leader, provide the right intent so the algorithms that you'll use for AI will actually work. The other part of that is trust. And it's not only the human trust, but it's us ability as operators to trust the AI. That it's going to give us an answer better than we could do ourselves. That's going to be a challenge. And I think with time, it's something that we'll have to get used to as we move forward. And the other part, when we talk about AI, and is the ethical aspect of this. We just don't want it to make all the decisions. We want it to tee up options, because you still want to have a human on the loop to make some of the decisions, because there's a level of accountability. You can't go back and blame the algorithm completely. You got to put the blame on somebody's shoulders if things don't go right. Same thing for the successes. You're not going to pin a medal on a piece of AI. You're going to pin that medal on somebody who's actually making things happen. Now, maybe the coder who's doing that, but you really need the team that has to come together. It's the trust aspect to me is kind of the most important piece associated with this concept.
Yes, sir. All right, sir, we have time for one more question. How can the DARPA Forward participants help fill in any gaps in Air Force R&D?
Well, that's a really good question. And what I really think about here is, I don't know what I don't know. I know I still want to be the most respected Air Force in the world. I know I do not want to lose. And so a conference like this, where you have a lot of great minds that come together, it's the opportunity for you to collaborate on various thoughts and look at operational problems. This is an area that I think we as an Air Force can do a better job of, not asking for a particular widget to solve a problem, provide an operational scenario and a problem we're trying to solve, and let those with the great minds kind of come together and go, there are ways we can get this done. And you will probably come up with an idea we never thought of. And you'll probably get there much faster than we would, and you can probably do it in a less bureaucratic form. That's the other part about working in the Pentagon. You can slow ourselves down because of some of our processes. And so that's the thing I like about DARPA, because they're able to move a bit faster, and they can kick the ball and drag us with them. And this is where DARPA Forward can really help the United States Air Force and the Department of Defense.